Somewhere in the dark space between two dying stars, a fleet of 40 warships dropped out of hyperspace and turned toward a tiny blue that none of them would ever forget. Field Marshal Goen stood at the command table aboard the flagship Harrow, watching the planet grow larger on the viewing screen. He had done this 216 times before. 216 worlds. All of them conquered. All of them kneeling within days. He expected nothing different from this one. "What do we know about the target?" he asked, not because he cared, but because protocol demanded it. His intelligence officer, a thin Dreven named Sol, pulled up the file. Third planet from a yellow star. One natural satellite. 70% surface water. Dominant species is bipedal, carbon-based, roughly your height. They call themselves humans. Pre-interstellar civilization. They have primitive nuclear technology and basic orbital capability, but nothing that could threaten us. Goen barely listened. He had heard this briefing 100 times with different names and different planets. They were always primitive. They always had nothing that could threaten the Dominion. And they were always right. Atmosphere, he asked. Nitrogen-oxygen mix. Breathable but rich. Higher oxygen content than homeworld by about 40%. Gravity, 1.7 times standard. Goen frowned slightly at that. Heavy. His soldiers would feel it in their legs and backs. But the Dominion had conquered high-gravity worlds before. It was nothing they could not handle with powered armor and stimulants. Landing zones, he asked. Sol highlighted 3 points on the planet's surface. Primary zone here, in a dense vegetation belt near the equator. Secondary zone on this large continent to the south. Tertiary zone on the central plains of this northern landmass. All three are far from major population centers. Standard protocol, establish ground control before engaging the natives. Goen nodded. Begin descent. All carriers. Standard formation. The order went out across the fleet, and within minutes, 30 troop carriers detached from their warships and began falling toward the blue planet below. Each carrier held 500 Dreven soldiers in full combat gear. 15,000 troops in the first wave alone. More than enough for a primitive world. Goen watched the carriers disappear into the white clouds that swirled across the planet's surface. He felt nothing. No excitement. No concern. This was routine. This was what the Dominion did. They arrived. They conquered. They moved on. He turned away from the screen and walked to his quarters to rest. He expected to receive the first victory reports within hours. He was wrong. The first carrier to touch down was Unit 7, which landed in the primary zone, the dense jungle near the equator. The ramp dropped, and 500 soldiers marched out into the green hell that humans called the Amazon. The heat hit them first. It was like walking into a wall of warm water. The Dreven homeworld was cool and dry, with thin air and gentle breezes. This place was the opposite of everything they knew. The air was so thick with moisture that their respiratory membranes began to swell almost immediately. Soldiers started coughing within minutes. Then the gravity settled onto their shoulders like an invisible weight. Every step felt heavy. Every movement cost more energy than it should have. Soldiers who had marched across a dozen worlds without complaint were gasping after 200 meters. But it was the small things that truly announced what kind of world they had walked into. The insects came first. Clouds of them. Biting, stinging, crawling things that found every gap in their armor and every exposed patch of skin. Soldiers swatted at them uselessly. One trooper pulled off his helmet to clear the bugs from his face and immediately inhaled a swarm of something tiny and winged. He choked and fell to his knees. Then the sound started. The jungle was alive in a way that no Dreven had ever experienced. Screaming birds, howling creatures in the canopy above, the constant buzz and chirp of a million unseen things. On most worlds, the wildlife went silent when an army arrived. Here, the wildlife did not care. Here, the wildlife screamed louder, as if daring them to come deeper. Squad Leader Pell was the first officer to report back. His voice crackled through the communicator, and even through the static, Goen could hear something he had never heard from a Dreven soldier before: fear. "Field Marshal, we have a problem," Pell said. "The environment is actively hostile. We have 9 soldiers down with respiratory failure, 12 more with skin reactions to plant contact, and something large just took 2 of my forward scouts. Goen sat up in his chair. Took them? What do you mean took them? I mean something came out of the trees, killed them both, and dragged one of them into the river before we could respond. We did not get a clear look at it. It was fast, faster than anything on any world I have served on. Goen stared at the communicator for a long moment. In 216 planetary conquests, he had never received a report like this in the first hour of landing. He opened a channel to the secondary landing zone in Africa. Unit 12, report status. The response came back broken and panicked. Field Marshal, a large gray animal, just flipped one of our transport vehicles into a river. We are taking casualties. Request immediate air support. Goen closed the channel slowly. He looked at Sol, who had gone pale. What kind of planet is this? Goen whispered. Nobody answered him. Because nobody knew yet. But they would learn. The planet would teach them. And the lessons would be brutal. Nobody on the Dreven homeworld had ever been bitten by a mosquito. This was important because it meant that no one in the entire Dominion had any idea what was about to happen to their soldiers. Within 6 hours of landing, the Amazon base camp had turned into a medical emergency. The swelling started first. Soldiers who had been bitten by the clouds of tiny flying insects began developing raised, itching welts across every exposed surface of their bodies. Dreven skin was thinner than human skin, smoother, more sensitive. What would have been a small annoyance to a human became a maddening, burning rash to a Dreven. But that was only the beginning. The medics noticed it around the 4th hour. 3 soldiers in the forward camp had developed fevers. Then 5 more. Then 20. Something in those insect bites was carrying a disease, something microscopic and vicious that had entered their blood and was now multiplying inside them. The Dreven had no name for it. The humans called it malaria, and it had been killing things on this planet for millions of years. Field Marshal Goen received the medical report aboard the Harrow and read it twice because he did not believe it the first time. 47 soldiers were now unable to fight. Not from enemy action, not from weapons fire, from bug bites. Pull them back to the carriers, he ordered. Set up sealed field hospitals. And give me a full environmental threat report from all 3 landing zones. The reports came in over the next 12 hours, and each one was worse than the last. The Africa zone had lost its commander. A creature the locals called a crocodile had pulled him into a river during a perimeter patrol. The creature was 6 meters long, armored like a tank, and had a bite force that crushed Dreven armor like paper. When the soldiers tried to rescue their commander, a pack of hyenas, drawn by the noise and the smell of alien blood, attacked from the other side. The unit broke formation and scattered into the grassland, where 3 more soldiers stepped on venomous snakes. The Midwest zone had seemed safer at first. Flatland, open sky, no jungle, no river predators. The soldiers had set up camp and begun construction of a forward operating base. For 8 hours, things were calm. Then the sky turned green. Goen had never seen weather like what happened next. None of them had. The Dreven homeworld had mild seasons and gentle rains. They had no word for tornado. They had no concept of a rotating column of wind that could move at 300 kilometers per hour, rip trees from the ground, and throw vehicles through the air like toys. The tornado hit the Midwest camp without warning. It lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the forward base was gone. 12 carriers were damaged. 80 soldiers were injured. 31 were dead, killed by wind. Just wind. Goen stood in the command center of the Harrow and stared at the casualty numbers on the screen. In 48 hours, he had lost over 300 soldiers across 3 landing zones. Not a single human had fired a single weapon at them. The planet itself was doing the killing. "So," he said quietly, "pull up the full biological survey of this world." Sol brought up the data and began reading it aloud. As he read, the color drained from his face. Earth had over 8 million species of living things. Most of them were hostile. The oceans contained creatures with enough venom to kill a Dreven in seconds. The forests contained plants that produced chemical weapons, poisons, acids, compounds that caused blisters and blindness. The soil was full of bacteria and fungi that could eat through metal, dissolve organic material, and infect wounds within hours. Even the water, the simple drinking water, was teeming with microscopic life that attacked anything foreign. And then there was Australia. The unit sent to Australia as an additional scouting force had gone silent 12 hours after landing. When Goen finally re-established contact, the surviving officer, a young lieutenant named Barrow, gave a report that sounded like something from a nightmare. "Everything here is venomous," Barrow said, his voice shaking. "The snakes, the spiders, the jellyfish in the water. There's a small blue creature the size of my fist that killed a soldier in 4 minutes. For minutes, Field Marshal. And there is a mammal with a bill like a bird and a tail like a flat paddle that has venomous spikes on its legs. We lost 2 soldiers to it. They died screaming." Goen closed his eyes. "What is the name of this creature?" "The local database calls it a platypus, sir." Goen turned to Sol. "A platypus," he repeated, as if saying the word would help him understand it. Sol had no answers. Neither did anyone else on the flagship. Goen opened a channel to Supreme Commander Rallo back at Dominion Central Command, 3,000 light-years away. He kept his voice steady, but his hands were shaking. "Supreme Commander, I am requesting additional medical support and environmental hazard teams. This planet is not what we expected. It is hostile at every biological level. The atmosphere is too rich. The gravity is too heavy. The wildlife is predatory and venomous. The weather is violent beyond anything in our records. And we have not yet engaged the native population." There was a long silence before Rallo responded. "You were given 40 warships and 15,000 troops to conquer a primitive world, Goen. Are you telling me the planet is winning?" Goen looked at the casualty reports scrolling across his screen. He looked at the footage of the tornado. He looked at the image of the crocodile that had eaten his zone commander. "Yes, sir," he said. "That is exactly what I'm telling you. On the 4th day, the food ran out. Not because the Dreven had not brought enough. They had brought standard rations for a 30-day campaign. The problem was that Earth's microorganisms had found their way into the sealed storage containers and started eating the food before the soldiers could out a mold. Just a simple, green, fuzzy mold had somehow penetrated the supply containers of the Amazon base. Within 2 days, it had spread to every ration pack in storage. The mold ate through the packaging material like it was not even there. When a hungry soldier tried to eat around the contamination, he was in the medical tent within an hour, vomiting and shaking. The same thing happened at every landing zone. Earth's biology did not just attack the soldiers. It attacked everything they brought with them. Fungal spores landed on equipment and began breaking down the rubber seals. Bacteria found its way into water filtration units and clogged the filters with biofilm. Insects chewed through wiring insulation. Something small and furry, the humans called them rats, got inside a carrier at the Africa zone and destroyed an entire communications array by chewing through the cables. Field Marshal Goen received these reports with a growing sense of dread that he had never experienced in his entire military career. He had conquered worlds where the natives fought back. He had conquered worlds with dangerous terrain. But he had never faced a world where the biology itself was at war with him at every level. He called a meeting of his senior officers aboard the Harrow. "Give me a full status report," he said. General Torin, who commanded the Amazon zone, spoke first. "We have lost 412 soldiers to environmental causes. Disease, animal attacks, toxic plant exposure, fungal infections, and heat exhaustion. Another 600 are too sick or injured to fight. Morale is collapsing. Soldiers are refusing to leave the carriers." Colonel Mawson from the Africa zone was next. Similar numbers. "We have also lost all 3 of our water purification stations. The local water is so full of microbial life that our systems cannot process it fast enough. We are running on emergency reserves. 2 days of drinking water left." Lieutenant Hask, the most junior officer at the table and the only surviving commander from Australia, simply said, "Pull us out. There is nothing in Australia that does not want to kill us. I started with 500 soldiers. I have 209 left. None of them will go outside the carriers anymore." Goen turned to his chief medical officer, Dr. One. What is killing us exactly? One pulled up a long, long list on the display screen. Where do I begin? This planet's biosphere has been engaged in an arms race with itself for billions of years. Every living thing here has evolved to either kill, poison, infect, or consume every other living thing. The plants produce toxins to stop animals from eating them. The animals produce venom to kill each other. The bacteria and viruses evolve so rapidly that even this planet's own dominant species, the humans, cannot fully defeat them. She paused and looked directly at Goen. The humans breathe an atmosphere that is technically a slow-acting corrosive gas. Oxygen, Field Marshal. The thing they need to survive is the same thing that rusts metal, feeds fire, and destroys organic tissue over time. They drink water that is a universal solvent. It dissolves almost everything it touches given enough time. Their bodies operate at an internal temperature that would give a Dreven a dangerous fever. And they consider all of this normal. The room was silent. The humans are not fragile creatures living on a gentle world, One continued. They're survivors of a planet that has been trying to kill everything on it since the day it formed. Every species on this world is a product of that violence, including the humans, especially the humans. Go and sat with that for a long time. What about the orbital bombardment option? He asked quietly. Sol shook his head. Supreme Commander Rallo has denied orbital bombardment at this stage. He wants a ground victory. He says the Dominion does not burn worlds it can use. Then he should come down here himself and try to use this one, General Torn muttered. Nobody disagreed. That night, something new happened. The Amazon base detected movement in the tree line. Not animals this time. Something organized. Something watching. The sensors picked up heat signatures, dozens of them, moving through the jungle with a speed and silence that should have been impossible in that dense vegetation. They appeared on the perimeter, stayed for exactly 4 minutes, and then vanished. Pell, who had survived the first 4 days through sheer stubbornness, reported it immediately. Field Marshal, the natives are here. They have been watching us. I believe they have been watching us since we landed. Why do they not attack? Goen asked. Pell was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was low. I think they were waiting, sir. Waiting to see what the planet would do to us first. Goen felt something cold crawl up his spine. 216 worlds he had conquered. On every single one, the natives had panicked when the Dreven arrived. They had scrambled to mount defenses. They had begged for mercy. They had surrendered. These humans had done none of that. They had sat back, watched the invaders land, watched the jungle and the heat and the insects and the animals and the weather tear them apart. And they had waited. Patiently, calmly, like predators watching wounded prey. For the first time in his life, Goen understood what it felt like to be on the wrong side of a hunt. On the 6th day, the humans stopped watching and started hunting. The IT began at the Amazon zone at 3 in the morning, local time. The darkest hour. The Dreven had no night vision worth mentioning. Their homeworld had 2 moons and short nights. Earth's jungle at 3 in the morning was a blackness so complete that the soldiers could not see their own hands. The humans could see just fine. They had brought technology for that. Infrared goggles, thermal scopes, and simple knowledge of the terrain they had grown up in. They moved through the jungle like ghosts. No sound, no light, nothing on sensors until they were already inside the perimeter. The first explosion took out the main power generator. The second took out the communications array. The third collapsed the field hospital tent with 406 soldiers inside ITB by the time the Dreven soldiers scrambled out of their carriers with weapons drawn. The humans were already gone. Back into the jungle. Back into the darkness that the aliens feared and the humans zoned. Pell rallied what was left of his troops and tried to pursue. They made it 50 meters into the tree line before the trap started. Pits dug into the ground and covered with leaves. Wires strung between trees at neck height. Sharpened stakes hidden in the undergrowth. Simple, primitive, brutally effective. Pell lost 12 soldiers in 10 minutes and ordered a retreat. As his surviving troops stumbled back to the destroyed camp, he heard something that made his blood freeze. Laughter, coming from the darkness. The humans were laughing. In Africa, the attack was different, but equally devastating. The humans came from the river. They came in small boats, moving with the current, silent as driftwood. They hit the camp at dawn, the one time of day when the exhausted Dreven soldiers were finally sleeping after another miserable night of insects and heat. The African fighters did not use advanced technology. They used fire. They lit the dry grassland around the camp and let the wind carry the flames inward. The Dreven, trapped between the river and the fire, broke formation completely. Soldiers ran in every direction. Some ran into the river, where the crocodiles were waiting. Some ran through the fire, where the humans were waiting on the other side. It was over in 40 minutes. The entire Africa Zone command structure was destroyed, but it was the Midwest that truly broke Goen's spirit. The Midwest Zone had been rebuilt after the tornado. New defenses, better positioning. Goen had moved his best remaining troops there because the flat, open terrain gave the Dreven clear sight lines and made surprise attacks impossible. Or so he thought. The humans came on the 7th day. Not from the jungle, not from the river. They came down the road, in pickup trucks, on tractors, on motorcycles, farmers, mechanics, teachers, ordinary people with hunting rifles, shotguns, and homemade explosives strapped to propane tanks. Goen watched the drone footage from orbit and could not understand what he was seeing. These are not soldiers. They wore no uniforms. They had no formation. They had no military training that he could identify. They were just people. Ordinary, angry, stubborn people who had decided that no one was going to take their land. And they were winning. The Dreven soldiers, weakened by days of environmental assault, dehydrated, sick, and demoralized, put up a defense. But the humans did not stop. They took casualties and kept coming. They lost vehicles and kept coming. One man drove a grain truck loaded with fertilizer explosives directly into the Dreven forward line and detonated it. He did not survive. He did not seem to care. Goen had seen fanatics before. He had seen desperate last stands on dying worlds. This was different. These humans were not desperate. They were not making a last stand. They were attacking. They were on the offensive against a technologically superior invasion force. And they were smiling while they did in orbit. Goen contacted the fleet's Tactical Intelligence Division. I need a full analysis of human military history. Everything. All of it. How do these creatures fight? The analysis came back 2 hours later. Goen read it in silence. Then he read it again. Then he put the datapad down and stared at the wall for a very long time. Humans have been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. Thousands of years. Millions of dead. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet and then decided to keep them as a deterrent rather than disarm. They had fought wars in jungles, deserts, mountains, oceans, frozen wastelands, and even in the skies above their world. They had refined the art of killing to a science and then kept improving it. And the most terrifying detail in the entire report was a single line about something humans called guerrilla warfare. The ability of small, untrained, poorly armed groups to defeat large, professional, well-equipped armies through sheer persistence, creativity, and refusal to surrender. That was what was happening on the ground. The humans were not trying to match the Dreven in firepower. They were bleeding them, slowly, constantly, from every direction, never giving them a moment of peace, never letting them sleep, never letting them eat, never letting them feel safe. Goen finally understood. The planet had softened them up. The wildlife had weakened them. The weather had broken their equipment. The diseases had filled their hospitals. And now the humans were finishing the job. He opened a channel to Supreme Commander Rallo. His voice was steady, but his words carried the weight of total defeat. Sir, I am requesting full evacuation. This campaign is lost. Supreme Commander Rallo did not approve the evacuation. He was 3,000 light years away, sitting in a comfortable chair on a comfortable station, and he did not understand what was happening on the ground. He could not understand. No one who had not stood on Earth could. You will hold your positions, Rallo ordered. Reinforcements will arrive in 14 days. You have 40 warships in orbit. Use them. Goa tried. He ordered air strikes on the human positions around the Amazon zone. The strike fighters screamed down through the atmosphere, locked onto their targets, and unleashed plasma fire on the jungle below. The jungle burned. The humans were not there. They had moved hours before the strike. Somehow, they had known it was coming. Later, Goen would learn that the humans had been monitoring Dreven communications since day 2. A group of their scientists, working out a university basement with equipment held together by tape, had cracked the Dominion's standard military encryption in 36 hours. 36 hours. It had taken the Dominion's own intelligence division 4 years to develop that encryption. Goen tried a different approach. He ordered a massive ground push at the Midwest Zone, concentrating his remaining healthy troops, just under 3,000, into a single armored column to sweep the area and establish an unbreakable perimeter. The column advanced for 6 kilometers without contact. Open farmland, empty roads, abandoned houses. The humans had pulled back. Goen allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps they were finally retreating. Then the column hit the bridge. It was a simple concrete bridge over a small river. The lead vehicle rolled onto it, and the bridge exploded. Not for Dreven weapons. The humans had packed the support pillars with homemade explosives and waited. The lead vehicle fell into the river. The second vehicle tried to reverse. A second explosion took out the road behind the column. They were boxed in. The humans hit them from both sides of the river with everything they had. Rifles, rockets, improvised grenades made from pipe and gunpowder. One group of fighters had mounted a heavy machine gun on the back of a farming vehicle and was driving back and forth along the ridge line, firing down into the trapped column. The battle lasted 2 hours. Goen lost 800 soldiers. That night, he sat alone in his quarters aboard the Harrow and began writing his report to Dominion Command. Not a status update, not a tactical assessment. A warning that he wrote about the gravity that crushed his soldiers and the air that burned their lungs. He wrote about the diseases that had no cure in Dreven medicine and the animals that killed without hesitation. He wrote about the weather that could destroy a fortified position in minutes and the biology that consumed their equipment from the inside. But mostly, he wrote about the humans that he explained that they were not a primitive species. They were a species that had been forged in the worst conditions the galaxy could produce. Their planet had thrown everything at them: ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues, predators, radiation, starvation, and they had survived all of it. Not by being strong, not by being fast, by being stubborn, by being clever, by refusing at every single moment in their history to give up and die. That he wrote about their endurance. Humans could chase prey across open ground for hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No other species on their planet could do this. No species in the Dominion's records could do this. They were persistence hunters, and they carried that instinct into everything they did, including war. That he wrote about their adaptability. In the space of 1 week, the humans had analyzed Dreven weapons, armor, communications, and tactics. They had found weaknesses in all of them. They had built countermeasures from scrap metal and farm equipment. A species that had not known aliens existed 8 days ago was already developing effective anti-alien warfare doctrine. He wrote about their unity. The humans fought each other constantly. Their history was drenched in blood. But the moment an outside threat appeared, they stopped fighting each other immediately. Every nation on the planet had contributed forces. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens from every continent were working together with a coordination that should have been impossible for a species with no central government. And he wrote about the one thing that terrified him more than anything else: they were not afraid. Every species the Dominion had ever conquered had shown fear. It was natural. It was expected. A superior force arrives from the sky, and the natives are terrified. The humans were not terrified. They were angry. There was a difference, and it was the most dangerous difference Goen had ever encountered. Afraid species surrendered. Angry species fought. And humans, it turned out, were very, very good at fighting when they were angry. Goen finished his report with a single recommendation, written in plain language so that no one at Dominion Command could misunderstand it. This world is not a class. 2 civilization on a habitable planet. It is a Class 12 death world inhabited by apex predators who have evolved to be the most dangerous things on the most dangerous planet we have ever encountered. We cannot conquer this world. We cannot hold this world. We should not be on this world. I am recommending immediate and total withdrawal. He sent the report and waited. The response came 4 hours later. Rallo had denied the withdrawal. Instead, he had authorized orbital bombardment. If the ground forces could not take Earth, then the fleet would burn it from above. Goen read the order and felt something he had not felt since the first day of the invasion. Fear, not of the humans. Of what the humans would do when they saw the bombardment coming. The bombardment order reached the fleet at midnight, Earth time. 40 warships began charging their orbital weapons arrays. In 30 minutes, they would be ready to rain plasma fire on every major population center on the planet's surface. Goen stood on the bridge of the Harrow and watched the targeting systems light up one city after another. New York, London, Beijing, Mumbai, São Paulo. Names he had learned only 8 days ago. Cities full of the most terrifying creatures he had ever encountered. Part of him wanted them burned. Part of him knew it would not matter, because humans had been watching the fleet too. The message arrived on every Dreven communication channel simultaneously. It was not encrypted. It was not hidden. It was broadcast openly, in the Dreven language, translated perfectly. Somehow, in 8 days, human linguists had learned enough of the Dominion's language to compose a formal military communication. The message was short. To the commander of the invasion fleet, we know you are charging orbital weapons. We want you to know that we have prepared a response. Over the past 6 days, we have captured enough of your ground equipment to reverse engineer your shield frequencies. We have mounted nuclear warheads, our own design, which we have had for 80 years, on delivery systems capable of reaching your fleet in orbit. We have aimed 12 of them at your flagship. We have aimed the rest at your remaining warships. If you fire on our cities, we will fire on your fleet. You will destroy our world. We will destroy your fleet. Neither of us will win. This is what humans call mutually assured destruction. We invented the concept. We have lived with it for decades. We are comfortable with it. Are you? Go and read the message 3 times. Then he forwarded it to Rallo. The silence that followed lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes during which Goen stood perfectly still on the bridge, watching the planet below, knowing that somewhere down there, human hands were resting on launch buttons, and those hands were steadied at Rallo's response was a single word. Withdraw. The fleet powered down its weapons. The carriers began emergency retrieval of the surviving ground forces. It was chaos. Soldiers who could barely walk were dragged onto ships. Equipment was abandoned. Entire camps were left behind with food, weapons, and technology that the humans would spend the next decade studying and improving. The last carrier lifted off from the Amazon zone at dawn. As it rose through the canopy, Pell looked down through the viewport and saw them. Hundreds of humans standing at the edge of the jungle, watching the ship rise. They were not cheering. They were not celebrating. They were just standing there, watching, the same way they had watched since the beginning. Pell turned away from the window and did not look back. In orbit, the fleet assembled and prepared for the jump to hyperspace. Goen stood on the bridge one final time and looked at Earth. Small, blue, beautiful, the most dangerous place in the known galaxy. Before the fleet jumped, he did one last thing. He composed a warning beacon, a standardized galactic broadcast designed to be received by any civilization with basic radio technology. He encoded it in every known language in the Dominion's database and set it to broadcast on a continuous loop from a satellite he left in orbit around Earth's moon. The beacon carried a simple message. Attention, all civilizations. Attention, all ships. Attention, all explorers, merchants, and military forces operating in Sector 7G of the Outer Spiral Arm. The third planet of the star system designated Sol is hereby classified as a restricted world. Class 12 Death World. Do not approach. Do not land. Do not engage the native population. The planet's biosphere is actively hostile to all known forms of non-native life. Its weather systems are violent and unpredictable. Its wildlife is predatory and venomous across all environments. and its dominant species, self-designated as humans, is the most dangerous intelligent life form ever encountered by the Dreven Dominion. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They are the survivors of a world that has been trying to kill them for 4 billion years. It failed. Do not make the mistake of thinking you will succeed where their own planet could not. Stay away from Earth. This is not a suggestion. This is a warning. Go and authorize the beacon and watch it begin broadcasting. Then he ordered the fleet into hyperspace. The stars stretched. The blue planet disappeared, and the Dreven Dominion ran 3,000 light-years away. The beacon's signal began spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. Within months, it was received by 47 civilizations. Within a year, over 200. Most of them read the message, looked at the data attached, the casualty reports, the environmental analyses, the footage of tornadoes and crocodiles and farmers with shotguns, and quietly updated their star charts to mark Sol as a no-go zone on Earth. A young radio astronomer named Devi was working the night shift at a listening station in the mountains of northern India when her equipment picked up an unusual signal bouncing off the moon. She recorded it. She ran it through her translation software. She read Goen's warning 3 times. Then she leaned back in her chair, looked up through the observatory dome at the vast, star-filled sky, and smiled. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now, they knew they were not. And they knew something else too. Something that made Devi's smile grow wider. The galaxy was afraid of them. She picked up her phone and called her supervisor. As it rang, she looked up at the stars one more time and whispered to no one in particular. "Your move.